Okay, good evening, everybody. My name is Mylène Sima. I'm an event facilitator here at McNally Robinson Booksellers. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory and that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Anishinaabe, Dakota, and Dene people, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. In addition, McNally Robinson itself rests on the land once occupied by the Métis community of Roostertown. We are gathered here this evening to present Spring to Spring, as you can see, they're not cooperating, an event from our good friends at Prairie Fire Press that celebrates both the launch of their latest issue, Burning Up, Burning Down, as well as the 4 previous issues of the magazine. We have a fantastic lineup of readers for you tonight, and it's my pleasure to call up your host for the evening, Kristian Enright. He's a member of the Prairie Fire Board and also an acclaimed poet himself. His debut collection. His debut collection, Sonar, received the John Hirsch and Eileen McTavish Sykes Award at the Manitoba Book Awards, and his follow-up Postmodern Weather Report is forthcoming. Please join me in welcoming Kristian.
Well, she steals some of my lines. She's very apt. So I'd like to actually thank Mylène. She's the master of ceremonies in a sense. I'm just going to be a mister of segues for the evening for you, really. So she set this up. So can we actually have a round of applause for Mylène? Thank you so much. So as said, yeah, so this of course is a launch of the Bar for Spring for Spring. Of course, we'll also be mainly, let's say, celebrating this edition, but we also have others. I will come back at the end with some just some remarks about some things that we can do. We're actually going to have an author photo. So all of you, you can't escape. You have to stay after, and we're going to get a photo of you together. Now, also just as a note, we also have a lot of we have several editions of the magazine, but also we have books by the authors as well. So we can, as long as they're not trepidatious of the public, they should be able to sign a book for you if you like. So hopefully that feels okay with everyone. So basically we're going to start. I'll do a quick couple of remarks. Just one that, of course, that Burning Up, Burning Down was a response to 2023 as being the hottest year on record. This may be the sole consolation for trying not to look outside too much and thinking about this. Think of spring into spring as you come to this podium when you are called up, and hopefully spring will come. So I think we're going to start now. So we'll be starting, of course, with Burning Up, Burning Down, and we're just going to mention this is Catherine Hunter is going to be coming up. Catherine is a wonderful professor. She taught me poetry when I was a young man, and I have just a brief bio. I think she has such an illustrious career, we had to shorten it. Catherine Hunter's books include the novel Afterlight and the poetry collection St. Boniface Elegies. She recently retired from teaching creative writing at the University of Winnipeg. Please join me in welcoming her.
I think that's me. That's me, right? Okay. See what half of you are former students. So thanks to everyone at Prairie Fire for taking such good care of our writing here in this province and across the country, of course. And thank you for organizing this event. Thanks to McNally Robinson, as always, and our host, Kristian, being his usual brilliant, gracious self. Thank you, Kristian. I'm going to read a couple of short bits from this story. It's a rather long story. And this is fiction, I swear. And the title is Getting Away with It. When Ingrid found out she was pregnant, she and Reiner argued for weeks about moving down island to Victoria for treatment. In those days, the early 70s, you could get help if you asked for it. You could get a methadone prescription and placement in a residential program with a counselor to help you taper off. Ingrid hated the idea. She didn't trust doctors or counselors, and she had serious reservations about the government in general. But Reiner kept after her and even promised that he'd go into the program too. He brought home a lot of prenatal pamphlets from the Campbell River Clinic, and finally, Ingrid got so scared for the baby, she agreed to risk it. Now down at the Quinsam, everyone had an opinion about this plan. Most people doubting that Ingrid and Reiner could ever change. But others said they needed our support and we should pitch in to help. They said Ingrid and Reiner needed to sublet their apartment and find a home for their pets. Not only the 2 cats and the ferret, but dozens of tropical fish, an albino lizard, and a boa constrictor. And they needed storage space for their furniture and for the racks and racks of dresses Ingrid had shoplifted, and a buyer for all the dope they had to unload. But what really interested Maya and me was that they needed someone to look after their sailboat. So a little editorial commentary here to link these 2 little parts together. The story is, the narrator here is Daphne. And so it's kind of a sneaky beginning because the story is really more about Daphne than about the owners of the boat that she's on. She's a runaway teenager up in Campbell River, and she and her best friend Maya have no stable home or steady income at all. But they convince Reiner to let them take care of his sailboat while he's away. The boat was called Getting Away With It. We met Reiner where he kept it moored at the marina behind the Discovery Inn. He told us Ingrid had gone ahead to Victoria. She had entered the treatment program and she and the unborn baby were doing well. He said he was leaving today to join her. He handed me the keys and a big fat manual that explained about the motor and the maintenance. He introduced us to the harbor master and paid up the slip for the rest of the season. He hugged us both and drove away, and that was that. We had a boat. We soon learned the names of all its parts and got used to its sudden noises, like the pump that turned itself on automatically if rainwater started to rise in the bilge. It was a beautiful boat, more beautiful than I had expected, and well taken care of. Above my berth was a skylight that I kept open to let the fresh air in. I'd lie directly beneath it and look up at the stars and let the waves rock me to sleep. The galley was cleverly made, with sliding compartments for storing pots and pans and utensils. We learned to cook on the tiny gas stove, and we began to feel at home. Maya's brother, Dennis, often came by to visit, and sometimes other friends dropped in too. Everything was perfect. Maya and Dennis sat on the deck with me, drinking bottled lemonade, enjoying the sun and the wind. I felt a grand adventure was about to begin. You girls should sail down to Hornby for the music festival, Dennis said. Yeah, I said, if the weather is good. Maya looked up at the sky. If the wind is right, she said. We looked at each other. We didn't exactly know how to sail.
Thank you very much. Thank you again, Melinda. Yeah. Catherine was a perfect citizen of our event. We do have probably enough time to get everybody in comfortably. So we do have roughly a 3 to 5 minute reading space, which was perfect as Catherine did it. So we'll now go to Kerry Ryan, who has published 3 collections of poetry, most recently Diagnosing Minor Illness of Children, Frontenac House, 2023, and An Afflicting Exploration of Motherhood and Midlife. In 2024, she placed second in the Prairie Fire Poetry Contest. We sort of have to do with them some kind of gesture of triumph whenever we're mentioned. I'm sorry. I'm asking the people far too high up in the board to do menial things, so that's a terrible thing of me. Sorry. Her poems and essays have appeared in journals and anthologies across Canada. In 2022, her poem Grief White was shortlisted for the CBC Poetry Prize. She lives and writes in Winnipeg. Please join me in welcoming Kerry Ryan.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Kristian. Thank you so much, McNally's, Prairie Fire. I'm so happy to be here tonight. I'm also a member of the Catherine Hunter Student Club. So you can grade me after, just you can write it down in the margin. I'm gonna read the poem that's in this issue. Yeah, I don't think it needs more of an introduction than that. South of the Paw. Smoke haunts the road. Oncoming traffic birthed from lowering cloud bank. Our little red car trembles behind government issue pickup parked crosswise. Flames chew crenellation of spruce. Orange surge, acrid heat heave. Dragon's breath on our cheeks. In the back seat, my daughter hugs her stuffies. I keep the engine on as locals haul out picnics, trusting in fire break while smoke blackens as if even smoke could burn. When the water bomber finally arrives, its flimsy wind-up toy, puny, as each of us rearranging little lives, wishing to rewind carbon back into bark and sap. We console with regrowth, next year's green, as fire swallows bellyful of lake water, licks its lips, leaps blacktop. I wrote that poem in 2022, and in 2023, I drove past the same spot on the highway, and that area of dead trees was just covered in fireweed, just beautiful, beautiful, bright purple, and it was such a bittersweet feeling to see that absolute devastation of forest, and then this beautiful, colorful plant life to take its place. I'm also going to read a poem that will be in the upcoming issue of Prairie Fire, and there's a geographic link between the poem I just read and this one. 54th parallel, early July. I nose the blue kayak loonward, and she beaks away. Dive, rise, dive. I'm grateful for loons, open-throated tremolo, for pearled droplets sliding off paddle, sun overhead nudging midnight, every delicate bubble. Her Escher tessellated wing and throat, panic cry, then silent slip deep. Resurface, hover, uneasy as I float too close. Can't fly when you're molting, my husband says. Self-help guru in an overlarge life jacket. She's already being pulled south, refletching. Summer is young, but anatomy keeps its own seasons. I heard the human body regenerates septennially, fresh hatch from outgrown cells. My own itchy skin begs to be sloughed, but what's beneath? Come autumn, loon will stutter across Lake Athapapiscow, strong feathers lifting old bones into sky. I'm gonna read one more poem, which also has a bird in it, and a matching color scheme of bird to the loon, and I feel like it's important to match your birds in reading. Territory. Pileated woodpecker crests and crests and crests, surge swoops to hydropole by the dismantled, rebuilt encampment. Late January, layered tarps, color of dirty snow along riverbank, Assiniboine agape at the mild weather. The bird's insistent eye, hysterical ululation answered by cube van reversing, beep, 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 in the loading dock opposite. Delivery to insurance company headquarters that backs on Colony, a street that evades renaming. Woodpecker drums, pesticide-soaked pine, red cap a flash announcing candidacy, claiming space. Faint plosive from distant riverbank, where glass high-rises overlook weathered tents. Woodpecker cocks its attention as if listening through mist. The old negotiation, which one of us will fly?
Thank you, Kerry. So we're now moving on to this edition, which features Joshua Whitehead's lecture as well. I would like to introduce Alex Merrill, who has published in Prairie Fire, the New Quarterly, Event, and several anthologies. She's also written for a myriad of other venues, including Canadian Museum for Human Rights. She's currently working on a memoir that explores her complex relationship with her father and his life in asbestos mining. I don't quite have a segue for that, but nonetheless, please join me in welcoming Alex Merrill.
Thank you. I'm also a former student of Catherine. She won't remember, but it was about 25 years ago. I still remember a poem that someone wrote in that class. And thank you very much to Prairie Fire for supporting local writers and encouraging us, and to McCandless for constantly promoting us. This is a non-fiction story, another one about my father, and called Wild Boar, B-O-A-R. I'm trying to ignore the banker's box at my feet. For a month, cards and letters has sat there under my desk because I'm scared to open it. What if what I want, what I need, isn't inside? I had to unpack the whole damn storage locker to find the box, which was at the bottom, of course. I was writing a story about my father, how he wasn't a big talker, how he was the most uncommunicative man in the world, especially with me. And wrangling with Dave ways to say this, I remembered his letter, the only one he ever sent me. It arrived in 1979, a sky blue airmail from Australia. Out of the blue. Mum was the letter writer, the card sender. He was the breadwinner, lord of the manor, but she was the boss of communications. I remembered standing in the hall of my Montreal apartment, feeling the dent of my father's words through the tissue-thin paper, wondering what he had to tell me. Was it so terrible that Mum couldn't say it? That it couldn't stay unsaid? My heart chugged. I can still feel it as I sliced the letter open. A question: when did Dad stop talking to me? Hard to tell. In case it's not clear, my father lacked the gift of gab. Sure, he had his moments. If you asked him about rocks or how the earth was made, for example. I picked up on this ploy early, as a kid angling for his attention. We'd be chuckling on the Chesterfield as wily coyotes fell over the cliff, and I'd say, "What are mountains, Daddy?" Or out walking hand in hand, I'd spot a yellow stone on the road and ask him, "Is that gold?" And he'd be off. It was unfathomable geological jargon. He was a geologist, a mining engineer, but at least he was speaking, and to me. When Dad's letter arrived, it had been eons since we could hold hands without feeling embarrassed, or since we talked at all. There were mitigating factors, such as 16,000 kilometers between us. 3 years earlier, he and Mum had moved to Australia so he could work for another mine. Since then, he'd wished me a quick Merry Christmas on their annual phone calls. Quick, because long distance cost $3 a minute. But if he'd lived down the street, would we have spoken more? A better question might be, at what point did I stop talking with Dad? I'll leave it there.
Thank you. I'd like to now introduce Deborah Schnitzer. Deborah Schnitzer continues to discover, shape, and pursue her creative identity as a writer, filmmaker, and community educator. She is delighted that Safety Song found a place in the winter edition of Prairie Fire. Her next novel, When Anna Pearl Lay Down in the Garden, is forthcoming from Turnstone Press. She's also the only person I know who can explain Gertrude Stein to undergrads, which deserves a lot of applause. Could we please welcome Deborah Schnitzer, please?
Is that water like drinkable?
It is, it's mine, but you can
So I would not take this off from you.
No cooties, I promise.
Thank you. And like everyone else here, I am so thankful first still to be standing. And today in honor that I found a can of purple hairspray and went crazy. Because what else does one do? I don't know. And so I'm here and I'm just, it's a wonderful organization, a wonderful person. We go back years and years. And I would like, first of all, to see, because I think that's important. And I'd like to read from Safety Song. I'm going to read its ending because I always start with an ending, so I'm going to. And it's two people. One is called Sorrel, and one is called Anselm. And Sorrel is a little distressed and very complicated, and she's just returned from the funeral of her mother, Ina Louise, whose body got lost in transit. And they are there, and there's also a very little person who is there, who watches, who comes from the belly of hope and sorrow. Quiet, quiet. Ooh, the little girl opens her eyes. That man, he can't swing his legs. Too tall, too long, not the way she can. Though, not that small, no, because she can tie up her own hair, yes she can, all by herself, and make her bed, and she can play, and not a pin drops in her room. No, quiet as a mouse, because if he comes, oh, she is quiet, and she won't tell. No, she would not, and if she did, who would believe and take her away? She sits up. Look, they are sleeping. One seems sleeping soundly. That is how the sleeping is to be. And that one, he is stroking her hair. That is nice. This way of stroking is nice. And the little girl slips over and she stands. Oh, she can reach the bed herself. She can seat beside. Would she touch him? Not allowed. Is she not allowed? No. But she can swing her feet, her ankle socks pretty, scalloped edges, her dress checkered, her best dressed, her Safety Song in her pocket, her panties with the pink heart, and she has her pink heart inside her chest and on her panties, and they can stay there because he is stroking her hair, and the tantrum, that tantrum is sound. Sorrel turns back to Anselm his hand, and she holds it in her own. I don't think I can open the box as they sent. I think we give it all away. We burn it. Whatever you need to do, and you do it, but with your eyes open, sweetheart. And the paring knife you put, I know. Someone can help you with the paring knife. He knows exactly how many have tried. Crying. Oh, the little girl is put out. You cry, baby. You stop that. I am here in my best dress, and I am swinging my legs and singing my Safety Song, and you blubber. Stop it, or I will blow your house down. The little girl would kick the one crying if she could, but she cannot reach her because that one is swallowed up in the arms of the man who is holding her and rocking her and telling her sweets. That's what he's doing. Sweets. and she is crying, and sweets are bad for you, and crying is bad for you, and wanting is bad for you, and I will stand on this bed and I will pull up my dress and I will break you. That's what I will do. Sorrel unfolds herself from Anselm's arms. Inside it hurts, and I am trying, you know I am trying, and she kisses his hand and his cheek, and pushing herself to her knees, she kisses the top of his head, holding him in her lap as if he were a child. I am so sorry. You try, and I try, and it hurts. It is what it is. Humming, stroking him, holding him, a little line comes. I hope, somebody. She stops. Ansel kisses her fingers. He traces the kiss along her lips, and sweetie, he says, bringing his body closer to hers. Sorrel's song is a little louder. Hi-ho, somebody comes to say. Her body deepens its breath. I forget all the work I do, and I forget. Holding on to one of the posts of the four-poster bed, the little girl feels she should jump up and down. That would remind. Here I am, she would say. Here, and you are not. She was so little, I think. How could they? I don't know. I would never, not for a moment, would I ever. I know. She was funny. Did you know that she was funny and sweet when she was a little? You were the funny and sweet little girl, my love. You were the funny and the sweet and the good, and not for one moment did you deserve. She was very small in the coffin, you know, my mother. Did I tell you that? Like a gnome. You are not small. You are grand, funny, good, and sweet. Yes. The little girl, oh, she lets go of the bedpost. If she is very quiet, and as she is small, she can lie down on top of the woman, the tantrum from throat to belly's bottom. Yes, she thinks she would fit, lying down, soft, breathing, light, humming, if she wants to, her safety song. And if the tantrum, not entirely the tantrum, if the tantrum stays still, cross your heart and hope to die, the little girl, she knows she can be still too.
And Len and I have an unusual comic relationship, and I was trying to think of it. We have this joke that actually is unarticulated constantly. The analogy was we're comicking dearness caught in the headlights of the thought train. And I'm not sure which one of us is which. So we just, anyway, sorry, that's just an aside, sorry. Okay, so we're now moving on to the haunted issue. So just take that up for our viewers elsewhere. So I have quite an epic introduction. Zilla Jones is an African-Canadian woman writing on Treaty 1 territory in Winnipeg. Her stories appear in Prairie Fire, the Malahat Review, Prism International, The Fiddlehead, Freefall Magazine, The Ex-Puritan, Room Magazine, Bayou Magazine, The Journey Prize Stories. In 2023, she was a Journey Prize winner and a finalist in the Writers' Trust Rowan Wallace Award. She's also won the Malahat Review Open Season Award, the Jacob Zilber Short Fiction Prize, the Freefall Short Fiction Award, and placed second in the Prairie Fire and Nelson Clark contest. Her debut novel, The World's So Wide, and a short collection of fiction, So Much to Tell, are forthcoming with Cormorant Books. And just to be detailed, she noted she actually came up to me just before we started, and so she's also been shortlisted for the CBC Short Story Prize as well. So I think there should be an event for your biography. So we're now going to welcome Zilla Jones.
Just to add to the list of people thanking Kristian and McCandless Robinson and Prairie Fire. Prairie Fire will always be special to me because it was my first story that ever got published was in Prairie Fire. So yeah, I had nothing on my bio and I had Prairie Fire. So I'm always appreciative of that. So this story is called Lightning Kills, and it is based on what I know of my great grandmother, who was an Afro-French woman from the Caribbean. And she practiced what probably a lot of you know as voodoo. And a lot of people talk about voodoo dolls. and how you stick pins in them and like they make people hurt. So that's not really how it works. And so this story talks about what the real philosophy is behind them. And a lot of people who practice these traditions practice what's known as syncretism. So they also practice Christianity. So my great grandmother was a very strong Catholic. The woman in this book is a Protestant. But they practice Christianity alongside the traditions which often come from Africa, and that's very misunderstood by other Christians, such as in this story, the grandmother's daughter's husband. So this is told from the perspective of the granddaughter, 8-year-old Praise. After church was Sunday school. Jacob Penner, the last of pastor's 6 sons, sat behind me. While the teacher wrote on the chalkboard, he yanked one of my braids and asked, "Who's that darky you brought to church?" "That's my grandma," I said. "What?" "It's French for grandmother." "No, it isn't," piped up Jacob's friend Toby, whose mother was French-Canadian, but like mom had been baptized as a Mennonite. "Ma mère is French for grandmother." "That's a different kind of French," I said. "Grandma told me, our French is from Trinidad. It's mixed with English and African." "So she's African," said Jacob. "If she's African, then you're African too." I hadn't considered that. African, I knew, was bad. "I'm not African," I said. "My mom is from Trinidad." "All of you are African," Jacob said. "You're black. You're children of Cain. That means you're cursed." "Praise Jacob Penner, Tobias Unger, pay attention," said our Sunday school teacher. "Mom," I asked on the ride home, "who are the children of Cain?" She swiveled in her seat and her eyes grew darker and narrower. "Where did you hear about that?" "Jacob Penner. He said we're cursed because we're African." Mom breathed in loudly and said, "That little..." Dad squeezed Mom's shoulder and she fell silent. Dad said, "Cain was Adam's son. He murdered his brother." "But what does that have to do with me?" Grandma said, "Nothing. That boy tried to say that Cain was black, but that don't make no sense because if he was black, so was his mother and father, which means the first people is black and then everyone else is black too." "But then why are we cursed?" "We not cursed," Grandma said. "They only saying that because they does love to curse us. They do evil to us that they doesn't want to face, so they blame us." "You mean they're like Eshu?" "That's a god, a voodoo god." My mother's breath came out in a hiss. She pressed her fingers to her mouth and shook her head at me as her eyes darted sideways towards my father. Grandma put her hand on my knee and said, "I'll show you a real curse, petit moine, later." The light from the red candles flickered against the walls of Grandma's room as she pulled the second suitcase out from under the bed. I craned my neck to see inside, but she shooed me away and shielded what she was doing with the formidable mass of her body. When she let me look, she had some twine in her hand. She wrapped, pulled, and folded it until a little figure took shape in her palm. She put a triangle of red cloth over it and began stuffing something inside. "Spanish moss," she said, showing me a handful. She held the figure up. "This is called a quen. We just use it for healing and not for harming. Harming is a very strong power, you understand? You don't harm if you can heal." She set the quen on Eshu's altar. "We doesn't harm," she said, "but we bring people to Eshu who already does do his work." She took my hand in hers. "What's the name of that boy, the one who say we all cursed?" "Jacob Penner." "Eshu," Rami said. "If you be in Jacob Penner, show us." I sensed a great space opening inside Rami, a space big enough for Eshu to crawl into, a place for him to hide, or a place where he could unfurl his wings and grow. Rami sang. I did not want to shatter the moment by asking, but then she sang again in English. "If I do evil, then my God will turn against me." Then she sang the French slowly, over and over, until I learned the words and began singing with her. The next day I had a softball game, and Dad came home early from the office. "How was work?" Mom asked as she served up chicken pot pie. Dad pulled off his tie and placed it beside his plate. "Busy," he said. "Lots of bankruptcies, lots of land sales. Got to go into the city on Thursday to meet with the judge." "God is the only judge," said Grandma. "Eat up," Mom said, her eyes bright and her mouth a taut line. I was first to bat and Jacob Penner was the pitcher. He hurled the ball toward my face and I ducked. "Strike," called the umpire, Noah Penner, Jacob's older brother. "It was a ball," I yelled. Strike one, Noah yelled back at me. Jacob threw the ball again, even higher than the last, but this time I swung at it. My bat met the ball with a crack that resonated down to my bones. The next sound was a smack of the leather against Jacob's mouth. He sank to the ground, blood spurting between his fingers as I rounded the bases. The crowd in the bleachers groaned and stared down at Jacob, but Grame was on her feet, cheering for me. An arc of sizzling air stretched across the field, connecting Grame and me. Thank you.
So much, Zilla. Thank you so much. All right, thank you very much. Our comic relationship continues. It's slapstick very too often, as you can see. Governor General's finalist and chai latte lover, Rowan McCandless is a Black and Polish writer from Treaty 1 territory. An award-winning writer, she's an author of the high-grade memoir Persephone's Children. Widely published, she's also the CNF editor with The Fiddlehead. Please join me in welcoming her. Welcome.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much, McNally, Robinson, and thank you as well, Prairie Fire, for this opportunity to get together with all of you this evening. I have a confession to make. I took your aftershave cologne from the medicine cabinet after the house was sold and you moved elsewhere in the city. I swathed the bottle with plastic wrap and squirreled it away on a shelf in my old wooden wardrobe, the one still waiting to be coated in raspberry milk paint because I was too exhausted by your daily hauntings to do much of anything else. Sometimes I took out your cologne, removed the cap, and deeply inhaled. I took hits like an addiction, a benediction, a longing for what never was. I conjure you because of compulsion, a repulsion that I seem to replay. Although the scent has dissipated, I am unwilling to toss the amber bottle into the garbage can. Part of you was slipping away, and I could do nothing to stop it. Scent can manifest a haunting. You occupied my body. My left wrist still feels the grip of your hand, seizing onto me, preventing my exit from the downstairs family room with the bird rest couches, the floral chair and ottoman, the TV we purchased with air miles, and the retro 60s bar that was original to the house. I stood on the painted wooded staircase a few steps above you and said, no, let go of me. I don't know who was more shocked by my assertion. The confused look on your face, you released me, and I ran upstairs, flung open the front door, and sat on the steps of the cedar porch, trying to understand what had happened. Touch can manifest a haunting. A desperate moment after I left you. I don't remember what caused it, but I do remember the taxi ride to the crisis response center. I sat huddled, my body rocking, my teeth chattering in the back seat as I was consumed by racing thoughts. You're going to kill me for having shared the secrets. You're going to kill me for having shared the secrets. You're going to kill me for having to share the secrets. You're going to kill me, you're going to kill me, you're going to kill me. Once I was at the CRC, I met with a doctor. There was a one-way mirror in the room. The psychiatrist kept repeating, he's not here, he's not here, you're safe. Slowly the terror subsided as the doctor's words pierced panic's carapace, and I returned to myself. Psychiatrist's persistent mantra felt like a modern-day exorcism. Being threatened can manifest a haunting. To cleanse the house of haints and evil spirits, I slowly burned herbs held over a clay vessel throughout every room of my rental home. With broom in hand, I did a ritual sweep throughout the house and pushed your ghastly, ghostly presence out the back door. Salt was sprinkled in the corners, on window frames and on doorways. I placed sprigs of rosemary nestled in the outward-facing corners of rooms. These corners acted as barriers between my home and your negative energy. The hardwood floors were mopped with pine and camphor oils, and for added measure, I tossed your cologne bottle into the garbage.
So thank you.
Thank you very much. Cale Plett is a non-binary writer and literacy educator who lives in Winnipeg. Their short fiction and poetry have appeared in journals across Canada, including Prairie Fire, CD2, the Malahat Review, Riddle Fence, Grain, Prism, Arc, Latitude, and most recently on Spec's latest issue featuring both a new horror story and an interview with a writer. Cale's favorite form is the YA novel, where they are represented by Amy Tompkins at Transatlantic. Please join me in welcoming Cale Plett.
Well, there we go. We're the same height, turns out, if I wear tall boots. Okay. So as always, thanks to Prairie Fire and to McNally, because this is always awesome. Okay, so the poem that I have in this issue, I wrote actually quite a while before the issue came out. And it means something different in this moment than when I first wrote it. So it's not about the Manchester Arena bombing in 2014, if you remember that. But that is in there. And this is, I would say, more a poem that's about how pain that is ignored and neglected and silenced echoes back and back and back. And about how collective punishment is evil, and about how killing kids is evil, which is not something you should have to clarify. And I think, we know right now that the nation of Israel is doing both of these things in a really unchecked way in Palestine. So I'd just like to say, before I read this poem, that if you have been speaking out against this genocide, that's good. And if you haven't been, it's not quite too late to start. The subtitle of this issue is Things That Keep Us Up at Night. And for me, that's the slaughter of the children of Palestine, because that's a wound that's not going to heal ever. So this poem is called Phantom Pain. In the uncertain hours, my knee starts screaming under the covers, and here are the tears again. I listen to my body, and it says, please. I ran for a bright haven yesterday down a gravel road beside a canola field after the Manchester Arena bombing tore apart bubblegum pop. 2 months from now, the news will tally the trauma with the lost limbs and double the injuries. Everywhere, ghosts. And I'll lie in an MRI scanner surrounded by curved white walls, not white noise, machine beating disjointed dance music through my double ear protection. Yesterday, I kicked up dust, acceleration under the sun, finally pulling up further adrift on a grid road than I'd ever been, tear-streaked from an ache that won't stop. In a small room 3 months from now, the doctor will say I pushed too hard, refer me to another doctor. Your body may not be built for running. Have you considered swimming? He prints the results, full of words I don't know, but my body understands. This won't wash off. And I have one more poem that is actually equally heavy, but I have happier news first, which I forgot to add to my bio, which is that I have a book coming out next fall. That's nothing like these poems. It's like a queer YA Hannah Montana story called Wavelength that's coming out with Groundwood Books. And then I do have one more poem, a poem called Highway Gates that came out in the Malahat Review. When I asked my dad if they let you back through the highway gates, I meant being dead. I figured that out now, just as I'm starting to forget that there's nothing I see now I didn't see then. Children's faces are 80% eyes, like cartoon characters we can't stand to watch blink out, like twisting in my seat to watch the orange arms coming down and nobody believing me until we heard it on the radio later. Blizzard and whiteout and the highway crosses slowly drifting under. I heard heaven has gates, Can we turn around? And the front seat told me it's twinned, that it's best to keep moving, to follow a semi because we had to visit Grandma now. I still don't know if the highway gates close heavy and final, like heaven, or more like something you can change your mind about. We didn't turn around. I meant being dead, and they told me why I wouldn't die. I still mix up the town of Hudson Bay, Saskatchewan with Hudson's Bay, which one marooned its captain and which had my grandpa's workshop in the backyard. The town said he could have the old church for it if he could pay to move it. Then they cut down my grandma's trees to get the church down the driveway. Marooned is the orange arms and being born and the cars in the ditch we don't stop for. It's all too bright, too white. Mom says she doesn't remember her own wedding. Waves over crosses, and it's only occurring to me now that no one is actually buried there. We saw a minivan like ours with the back half crushed. My dad whistled, but it was only a work van, so there was no one in the part that got hit. I could see that. There can't be anyone where there's nothing. I asked if the crosses were for God, but no, those are the ones on churches, even in a backyard. Grandpa wanted to be buried behind that shop. The highway crosses are just for people who died in car crashes, the front seat said. So if the gatekeepers really cared, they would leave it closed all the time. Because we got there after Grandma was asleep anyways, and she was the same, but she napped more and more. And Monday we left someone who was leaving, and I still don't get how that works and why we didn't stay. Because I twisted around and I still see Grandma waving between the drifts on the sides of the driveway. On Monday night, everything froze so perfectly. There were people skating down the Trans-Canada. It could stay that way. She died during the night, and she would have liked that people were skating on the highway. So maybe, someday. Thanks.
So much, Kim. So now we're moving on to the summer issue, the contest issue. So Jody Baltessen is an award-winning poet, writer, and archivist, retired in Winnipeg, Treaty 1 territory. Her work explores place in the archive, drawing on the materiality and layered meanings and landscapes and records, and the history of the archive itself. You can find her poems in Prairie Fire, Hamilton Arts and Letters, Grain, Pendraris, and elsewhere. Please join me in welcoming Jody Baltessen.
I too need to sleep. Thank you, Kristian. Thank you, Prairie Fire. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to read the poem, the first three stanzas of the poem, Ontario Trail Untethered. For those of you who don't know, the Ontario Trail is a super long hiking trail in Whiteshell Provincial Park that begins in Ontario, Manitoba, and ends in Ontario. So, Ontario Trail Untethered. Trail notes. Caution. This trail is over 60 kilometers in length. To reach the end, tramp through deadfall and gorge, trip over clatters of glacial scree, imprint the tread of your hiking boot into a geology of retreat. It is intended for fully equipped, experienced backpackers. Find your iliac crest, settle your pack on your hips, hitch, loosen slightly before starting out. Close the car door. Know how to use navigational tools. Legend. In the beginning. Scale. Awe. Advise someone where you are going. Magnetic north, northwestward, toward. Whom to contact in an emergency. If water fills your lungs, if fire leaps from tree to tree, if a dream bear swipes her paw across your face, if you are bushed. The forest slants vernacular. breathes a sway of sentences into a canopy of green, a narrative of bud and catkin, every leaf leaning in to hear the understory of seedlings, of biomass after fire, through falling rain, light transmuting, of mosses, noun and verbed, conjugating underfoot, a syntax of microbes predicating boreal. First night, deafening. In the morning, sun-fingered vowels, consonants baked in shade, coalesce, broken branch, bark clawed, scat stained blue. Modified by filtered light, the body conjuncts where the wind suggests, reaches out to conifer, trembling aspen, sap-stuck fingers curl. Night drops. Inside the tent, split skin remembers a point of departure. Moths navigate, and then the moon, infinitive, articulates a curvature of spine. Pine needles layer the forest floor. Boreal obad. As lichen rhizines, fractured gneiss pebbled under the tent, the citrus of pine interpolate my skin, the taste of truffle, the hard bite of iron. I caution myself to be gradual. Hold a banded rock, its surface rough, folds of feldspar, mica, quartz, calibrate a metamorphic time where there is always river, flowing past tree, bur oak, balsam fir, black spruce, exposed roots scrabbling for meager soil. I open my lungs to low bush blueberry, breathe the infinite sky, all its tributaries. My bones ache, a slow awakening. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, you may have noticed a University of Winnipeg motif. We have another wonderful professor, Margaret Sweatman, whose most recent novel is Gunsmith's Daughter, 2022. She's at work on her 7th novel and a collection of short fiction. She performs with the Broken Songs Band in Winnipeg, Treaty 1 territory. Please join me in welcoming Margaret Sweatman.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Hi, everyone. Oh, I just lost my spot. I was sitting here thinking that I've been associated, I was lucky enough to connect with Prairie Fire. I was thinking 40 years ago, I was thinking, I'm 80. Thinking, no, I'm just really bad at math. It wasn't that long ago. It was a long time ago, but it wasn't 40 years. And I had my notes here, just a second, I gotta find out where I am again. I'm gonna read from a story called The Heart of Calcutta, a little section of it. And it takes place in Montreal, where these students are living together in a student housing. Maybe that's all you need to know. Lauren felt the excitement of a delinquent when Father Gilles went home. Juji was in her room, the door partially open, the burbling of the aquarium, and Billie Holiday's "Good Morning, Heartache. You're the one who knew me when." The song was about Juji's dying mother. The one who knew me when is my heartache. She found some épicerie wine in the fridge, screw top red, rinsed the dregs of brandy from Gilles' glass, filled it with wine, took it into the living room and balanced it on the arm of the chair. She'd hate to let the night go by without finding a way to go mad. By mad, she meant soulful. Michael was somewhere in the house. She felt him here. She was waiting for him, sitting out like a decoy. Judy passed on her way to bed and said sleepily, "I'll bet dollars to donuts he went back to the monastery." How could he? He'd freeze, without shoes, without his jacket. Lauren wore her black wool coat and red toque, but still she was cold. She left her glass of wine on the arm of the chair and went to her bedroom for a blanket. Her room was in darkness. Someone had extinguished the lamp. The light through the window was thin blue now. She searched her bed with her hands. Juji's tablecloth from Afghanistan was here. Lauren took that. And she also wanted the mohair throw her mother had crocheted for her when she left home. She pulled at the bedding and felt someone resisting, as if she'd leave him uncovered. There was enough light in the room now to see that the bed was empty. Her heart was hammering. He'd left the impression of his body on the sheets and a smattering of black petals of blood. She yanked hard at the mohair and fled the room. The kitchen was empty, but the presence of evil was strong beside the fridge. She felt the maw of it, a surly, inhuman evil, and hurried past. She wished she hadn't smoked hash. She was intensely tired of herself, very sick of being Lauren. Her glass of wine had shattered on the floor. The thin, sour stuff pooled in broken glass. But she wanted to drink. She made a dash for the kitchen, took the bottle from the fridge, scurried back to the living room, and buried herself in blankets on the chair, pulling in her knees and cradling the bottle. And she wanted music, Satis du Napoli. She wanted Gilles to call to say that Michael had been found, and then the night would be over, and she could drink alone, spread herself out, make connections, and find at last, but no, there would be no at last, but more and more, and then less and less. Soul seeking, which is different from soul searching, is like sharpening a pencil. The pencil eventually disappears. It was a dull hour before dawn. Judy had turned off the oven before she went to bed. The house boomed with cold. Lauren didn't worry that the pipes would burst. She hadn't yet owned anything more complicated than a bicycle. Because people shouldn't talk to themselves, she whispered things to Michael. And then he was here, Michael. He crouched beside Lauren's chair in his lime green shirt with his long bare feet, his bony ankles like wrists, his long white toes almost beginning there, a fine spindle. He smelled acidic, like burnt toast, like burnt pea. "Are you cold?" she remembered to ask. "No," he said. There was a path of wet footprints from her bedroom to the chair, lightly stenciled in his blood. In his trembling hands, he held a piece of broken glass. The phone began to ring. Lauren realized with a sharp pang of disquiet that she didn't know the mentally deranged adults in the heart of Calcutta. She knew Owen's sound and the romance of her future, the special place she would possess in the world. Michael swallowed. His Adam's apple went up and down. Studiously, he shifted the shard of glass from his left hand to his right. He looked up into Lauren's eyes. The phone was ringing. He raised his right hand to test the hemisphere of glass against her jawbone, but it did not press down. It was not a perfect fit. When he flipped it towards himself, to his throat, the tension vanished from his face for a moment. Da-da-da-da.
Margaret. Okay. We have now reached the final edition. We're looking at the piece we make. Hello to everybody out there in cyberspace. So this, of course, was a response to the increased violence and wars in the world. Originally from Virginia, Fawley has called Manitoba for the home for the past decade. He holds an MFA from the George Mason University, where he is assistant fiction editor at Phoebe Journal of Literature and Art. His fiction and poetry have appeared in various journals and anthologies, including Prairie Fire, CV2, Arlington Literary Journal, the Northern Virginia Review, Parallel Prairies, and Expanded Horizons. He's also a wonderful member of our board as well, as is Zilla. Please join me in welcoming Will Fawley.
Give it a second. Thank you, Kristian, and a huge shout out to Prairie Fire and to McNally Robinson and to Kristian, who is that intersection for us of those two groups that are kind of the pillar of our literary community here. And big thank you to all of you for being here tonight to join us in celebrating literary community. So I'm going to read from my story, Chasing the Distance, which is kind of inspired by this idea of, like we said, peace and war and what that can mean to different people, what it feels like when you're always expecting that worst moment and you're waiting for that because you know that's when it will all turn around. So it came out of that kind of idea of waiting for that moment, waiting for that worst moment so you can see peace start to come back to the world. And I will read from that story now, just from the very beginning. It's called Chasing the Distance. The horizon beckoned to Grant as he drove. He'd catch a glimpse of it on the crest of a hill, inclined to look out over the edge of the world. But just as he reached that new perspective, the horizon stretched on again into the distance, forever out of reach, until the next hill came with its empty promises. Trees blew past the car windows in a rhythmic flicker that pulsed like an uneven breath, and the world grew with each frantic gasp, the road stretching and swelling like a life well lived. Grant focused on the road itself. It was always the same distance to the horizon, no matter how much of its length the car consumed. He was so focused on the road that he didn't notice when it took twice as long as it normally did to travel the dirt road from the cabin to the highway. 15 minutes later, when he reached the convenience store that was only 5 kilometers down the road, Grant knew it was finally happening. When he was a teenager, Grant read a National Geographic article about how the expansion was increasing exponentially, becoming visible to the naked eye. Astronomers could detect a significant increase in the distance between the stars of constellations and other celestial bodies. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but their trained eyes could recognize it without a telescope. The constellations continued to stretch apart, to the point that Grant could see the extra space in the night sky by the time he was in university. On a family trip to the lake, the Big Dipper stretched across the horizon over Lake Winnipeg to scoop up the sea of water, and Orion's belt spanned the entire sky as if trying to hold up the Earth's pants. By the time Grant graduated from university and started his first job in marketing, the Earth itself had begun to expand ever so slightly. A team of graduate researchers in Norway discovered that the expansion was adding 2 to 4 seconds of commute time to the average commute of 45 minutes. Over longer trips, such as a 4-hour drive, you would need to anticipate an additional 5 minutes on the road. After Grant quit that first job and took on a new communications role for a tech startup called U-Turn that developed software for roundabouts, his favorite science podcast, Real World Theory, started covering the topic on a regular basis. The annoyingly passionate host discussed how the rate of expansion was rapidly increasing, and in the next decade, we would begin to be isolated by the growing distance as hour-long drives became multi-day journeys. They talked about the possible implications, the impacts to travel and daily life, and the unknown end result. It terrified Grant, but it also fascinated him. How wonderful it was that the universe was so alive, it was growing, bursting with life and limitless possibility. Grant began timing his daily commute and kept a spreadsheet of how long it took each day, plotting out data points and infographics that showed an alarming upward spike in the rate of expansion. His partner Jasper thought it was just another one of his neuroses and argued that when the commute was longer, it was likely due to traffic, the endless construction, or a change in routine. Jasper was probably right. But what if he wasn't? What if it was something more? And now it was clear that it was so much more.
You like this perfectly, that's equilibrium, beautiful, thank you. Okay, so now I just have to ask a question. I'm not actually sure if our final reader was able to make it today. So is Evan J here? Yeah, oh, wonderful, great, yes, okay. Evan J is the author of the poetry book Ripping Down Half the Trees. They also worked for Vellum magazine and the Mendocino Coast Writers Conference in California and for the Winnipeg International Writers Festival. So our final reader for the evening will be Evan J.
Got it? Right. This poem's pretty short, so you're taking a photo. Heads up. Yeah. Thanks for reading. That was great. I try to remember back. Margaret, it's great to see you wherever you are. Jody, it's good to hear the poem a second time. Have you hiked the Mount Area before? Yeah, we should talk about that. I gotta run it in September, so. And Cale, congrats. That's so great that your book's getting published. Groundwood's like such an awesome fit for anybody, but particularly for yours. Anyways, yeah, I got a short poem. It's kind of, what is it? It's an ode. It's kind of a Christian sermon. It's kind of a memoir about a dinner. It's from the perspective of a trout. I was thinking I was gonna say that. It's like, it's not funny at all. This sounds like it's gonna be funny. Jesus fish. To my belly, all speckled and roe-filled. To my last supper, their fish dish. Here they eat for my minerals, for my brooks. They eat for knowledge, for semio capital, as avoiders of grocery bills, for the art that is me on a plate, the land that is a plate, for the water that held both our skins tight, that holds our coastal positions, that once pressured us into life, that is our gravity. Lay my flesh gill to grill, scale to table, lungs out for rejoicing, innards for the birds. For they have now wrapped the Lord inside of me, swaddled me in tinfoil, have piled high the seasoning, have sacrificed blood and time and a lemon to our religion. Oh, the stinging tingle of it all, this acidity in our sweet spot, the sour proof that suffering is for the righteous, is immaterial, is temporary, is ongoing, and will decompose me. That's it. Thank you so much.
I actually have fishing stories that don't involve actually fishing, but I once wrote an essay, and my dad caught this. It was about Old Man in the Sea, and I said that the fish that he wrestled was a mackerel. And my dad was the only one who was like, it's a marlin, Kristian. A mackerel's this big. That isn't exactly, yeah, I should have failed that, but nobody in the department got that, thankfully. So everyone, we've of course reached the culmination of our evening, so I'd like to thank all the contributors, especially from the writing issue, including Sue Goyette as well, and Von Jagab as well for the compelling cover. All of you for showing up, of course. Wonderful to see this community still vibrant. So a couple of notes. So what we'll do is we're going to have, of course, some signing. We'll try to get all the authors up here quickly to get a photo. Now, what was my other notes here? This is where I'm like a bumbling professor. What was I going to say? Oh, of course, we'll just, yes, and also just thank the board, especially we have an incredibly constructive, lovely board that I think Janine has spoken of quite well. They are so considerate of each other and everybody else, so it's really amazing to be a part of it. Also, so just for the signing portion, of course, we encourage you to have any of the editions signed or any of the books by the authors, of course. Remember just to pay for the book before you walk out of the store. We hope one day for Utopia where books are given away for free, but then we'd be McNally Robinson instead, so we wouldn't make any money, sadly. Books do transcend capitalism at times, but only while they're being read. So everyone, thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Milen, for your extraordinary work tonight, and for all of you. And we don't have to be out here till about 9 o'clock, just so you all know, but we all have, and thank you for your literary attention spans. You did very well, everyone. So thank you. So a huge round of applause to the whole audience, for all of you guys, and yeah, for everyone at Prairie Fire. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, of course. Yes, everyone. So everyone who